All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Excited to be here today with one of my hypnotherapy instructors and mentors, Mary Lee LaBay, talking all about the inner child, how to heal some deep inner child wounds through hypnotherapy. And I'm Jodie Solberg. I have been a certified hypnotherapist since 2001 for quite a while here. But my background is social and clinical psychology. And so I was very clinically trained, and I focused a lot throughout my career and still do on things like trauma and anxiety and working with adults as well as families. And when I met Mary Lee, it was really through the grapevine a little bit. We're in the same geographic area, and I knew a lot of people that she had trained through places like Bastyr University in the Seattle area, Bellevue College, and just was in my radar. And I sought her out because I knew that she was doing some deeper spiritual work as well as working virtually. And that was really appealing to me. I was very burnt out. And when it came to, my therapy life and my coaching life and trying to do all at the same time and really wanting to work with people as whole people, I knew that I wanted to dive deeper into my hypnotherapy roots. And so contacted Mary Lee and then in 2019 took her certification course. Now been certified as a master hypnotherapist with her, as well as a transpersonal wellness coach, and doing some more spiritual work and deep inner journeys. And it has really been amazing. So that's why I wanted to have Mary Lee on here with me today to talk about her programs, because it gave me a depth of knowledge and skills and understanding that I didn't necessarily have from my coaching training, from my clinical hypnotherapy training. It really took it to the next level. So Mary Lee, thank you so much for being here. And I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell everyone your background so they can get to know you like I do, because you definitely are someone that I feel like is a pioneer in a lot of ways. I know that's kind of a strange thing to say, but I do definitely feel like, again, you're that mentor, somebody that I look to, because you have been doing this for a very long time as well. And at this high level that you have so much to offer to, the community. So appreciate you for being here, and I'll give you the floor.
All right. Well, thank you for having me here and having this chat today. It's always fun to connect with you and chat. Like you said, I've been around for a while. I have been practicing in private practice with hypnotherapy since 1997. I received a clinical hypnotherapy certification as well, which was very in-depth at the time. And prior to that, I had been working with past life regression. So I come from this spiritual background, tarot, astrology, metaphysical studies, hands-on healing, different modalities that I had been practicing and studying. And one of the loves of my life was past life regression. And so when I finally was able to experience a past life, I kind of just like, wow, this was just amazing, and just lit up my life. And so then I started learning how to do past lives and working with that for many years, like 10 years. And then I got my clinical hypnotherapy certification and married those two modalities together. So the way that I was doing past life regression was really kind of like a sightseeing tour, which is what most people do and how most trainings go. And so then when I learned all these techniques of hypnotherapy and NLP and other kinds of psychology and different modalities, then I realized how elegant and how powerful it was to apply the hypnotherapy to the past life, and also to apply the past life to the hypnotherapy. So the two are definitely married very well. over the years, I have written 6 books, and so 2 of them are on past lives. And this one is used as a textbook for practitioners in many classes around the world. And then my latest book is Mastering Hypnotherapy. And again, this is used by many schools now as a textbook, and it's based on the training that I teach. And so this one I just published in 2023 or 24, 23, 24. I can't remember. Recently, I published this in
I think it was 24, but I
23. No, it says copyright 23. I know.
Maybe it was the end. Maybe that's what is holding us up.
I know. It's time flies, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was remodeling. Remember, I bought a new house and I was remodeling it, and in my spare time, pushing this book through and getting it published. That's why the dates are a little crazy. But anyway, so I have a big background, and then I was teaching, like you said, in Bellevue College and Bastyr University. And Bastyr is a university that trains naturopaths and all the alternative or complementary medical acupuncture, things like that. And so a lot of their students were coming through the hypnotherapy course and adding that to their medical practice. And then also a lot of coaches, a lot of massage therapists, a lot of people from different modalities also want to add the hypnotherapy into what they're doing. And so that brought me to you, I guess.
I had a friend who was a nutritionist and hypnotherapist that I would partner with for some, different things that we were offering. And that's how I learned about you, because she learned from you at Bastyr. And like I said, it's just a small world, and it's been amazing to cross paths and to be able to work with you for all of these years. And I always am the one who shows up at all the trainings.
You do.
and I'm very fortunate that you sometimes ask me to help, with those trainings now. And it's just been really amazing. I'm the current president of, NGH in Washington chapter, and you were on the board previously. And so it's just been, so wonderful to do so many things together over the years. And, your techniques, like I said, just really, that's why I said more of a pioneer, because the way that you utilize the techniques is different. It just is. That's something where I really learned so much, because like you said, if somebody's doing past life regression, instead of just having it be a sightseeing tour, can actually do the therapy work in the past life regression. Absolutely. I actually did a session like that this morning, as a matter of fact, where we were figuring out what were some of the things that were holding her back. And, some were from this lifetime and some were from the past. And so figured out, what we needed to do to heal from those past hurts. And I used your techniques for that. So I utilize them every day.
Yeah. We've had a lot of coaches come through, and they're combining the hypnotherapy in past life with their coaching profession. It's, whether you want to start a brand new career and do this exclusively, I give you everything you need in order to do that successfully. But then a great number of the people that come through are combining it with nutrition or psychology or coaching or music therapy, art therapy, a lot of different modalities. But you're right. When I was trained, and I think this is what differentiates my training, when I was trained, we were trained to use scripts. And the majority, a lot of the, maybe it's not the majority, but I think it's pretty close, of the trainings, they teach you, you take a thorough intake from the person, and you're not even getting paid yet. You're just finding out what it is they need, and maybe what their phobias are and what their desires are, what they like and don't like. And then you have to go and create a script or a metaphor, or you have to go through all these books of metaphors to find the right one that you think is going to help your client. And I was trained that way. I was also trained in Ericksonian, and so it was kind of a blend of things, but they had really, put that script thing in the forefront. And so when I got out into the world and started practicing hypnotherapy, I found it to be extremely distracting, questionable as to how effective I was being, and just a lot of stress around it. So immediately I thought, I have to change this. This is not working. So I started becoming, doing a lot more Ericksonian. But what I've developed is, a method where it's all done in dialogue, where the client and I are talking, but they're in trance. I am a little bit, because I always go in trance with my clients. But they're more in trance because I have to stay in control or stay ushering them within the process. But we're dialoguing, and so their subconscious mind is really directing where I need to take them next. So I get them into trance, and then I'm really turning it over to them, and we're dialoguing. And depending on how they respond is how I know which tools to use next and where to go with them. And so it's a very beautiful process, very organic, client-centered, and very, very effective. And there was something
Absolutely. Client
yeah,
was there something else that was on the tip of your tongue?
It was, but now it's I got down there so far that I've forgotten what I was going to say about that. But yeah, it's very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. It is, absolutely. Like you said, so many people are taught, you said, using scripts, and it becomes this crutch. And being client-centered is so important, because what I found is often, people are coming in more for the effects or the symptoms rather than the root cause. And
Yeah.
so then the client thinks, and you think you might be going in to work on one thing, but it really is something else that their subconscious needs to work through at that moment. And then if you're relying on a script for this one box that you are stuck in, then it throws you off, and you don't know what to do when these other things come up. And I've heard that from a lot of people, who, the like 3-day trainings, or like, there's these quick certifications, or, things that are very limited or script based, can be really challenging for them, because they do feel a little handcuffed in that, that they aren't as well rounded, when we're able to utilize so many different types of techniques and still make them client centered, completely customizing them. Then really, no matter what comes into our office, we're going to be able to help them work through that in the moment and meet the client where they're at, instead of them needing to fit into whatever our system is or our script is for that day.
Right. A lot of people that come through my trainings, not the majority, but quite a few of them, have had other training, and they said, I don't feel confident. I didn't get support through this. You were learning, and it was either very brief or incomplete, or they only learned a narrow number of techniques that they can use. And then, based on scripts, a lot of it. And then they come into my class and they gain all this confidence, and they're able to launch their career. Now, I'm not saying the other classes aren't great. There's a lot of good training out there, but a lot of people that go to other trainings come to mine. And, because I've been in business. I started my practice here in Washington in 1997. So kind of the official start of really marrying the hypnotherapy with the past life and launching what I do. And over those 30 years, 28 years, I've learned a lot. I've taken a lot of trainings. I've gotten, techniques from all sorts of instructors and authors and people, and gathered that all together. And then in my training, I'm giving all of that. It's not just like, well, here's, a few select techniques. I'm giving you everything I use in my career all the time to get results for any issues that come to you. And so it's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
So
very comprehensive. Absolutely. And I love how it's structured. Now, I was in the first class that was hybrid, that was
yeah.
in person and virtual. And like I said, one of my interests was in learning how to work virtual, because that wasn't something that I was trained in. It didn't exist when I was trained.
Just in time for COVID, right? And now
yeah, and it was pre-COVID. And so it was perfect timing, because I was already transitioned to that. But a lot of people come in with maybe skills, like you said, that are limited, or they come in with coaching skills or NLP. What I love is that you also pull from different types of techniques, like NLP techniques, for example, to make it really well-rounded and comprehensive. And it's something that, a lot of times we're just over here and we can only work on this one thing, or we only help people with this. And it has really, like I said, just made everything more well-rounded for me in my practice, to where I don't have those issues. I don't get thrown off. I felt like when I was coaching, I really was stuck in that coaching box. I wasn't able to help people with those deeper issues, because I was talking to them about strategy and goal setting and all of these things. But then they'd get frustrated and upset because they couldn't figure out how to get themselves to do the things they knew they needed to do. Right. And at the time, I was working with people in their businesses, and we're whole people. We're not just a business over here in a bubble somewhere. And so they would have challenges, whether that was relationships or unhealthy coping strategies and habits, or those limiting beliefs and negative self-talk, and a lot of childhood things. And that's my wheelhouse too. On the therapy side, because I kept those separate for so long, I was always really working with people who were dealing with things like trauma and abuse and all of these past issues, often from childhood, and they were repeating these patterns. And it didn't matter, if I was working with, a family with kids, some people were dealing with the same things when they were 3 as when they were 73, when I was working with them. And when those things don't get resolved early, then we carry those patterns throughout our lives. And so that's why I wanted to talk today specifically about the inner child techniques, because I utilize them so often. Because again, that's when we are like I always say we're little subconscious sponges, right? We're taking it all in and we're building our belief system and structure. We're getting programmed for who we are, right? Our beliefs about ourselves, our situation, our relationships, the world around us, how it works. And so those things stick with us. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about your thought process behind how we heal some of those inner child wounds and those things that really do stick with us, that end up turning into the adult coping strategies that aren't the healthiest, or the adult attachment issues and the adult relationship problems.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because you can observe people, whether it's in the public or among your friends and family, and you can observe certain behavior, knee-jerk behaviors, certain things that they do, and you can predict where they had at what age did they have the trauma. When you say, well, my husband's acting like a 3-year-old, or an 8-year-old or something, and you can just tell, when an adult is acting like a teenager or younger, right? And I did this with my husband, actually. And I'm not going to go into the details, but there was something that happened. And I said, what happened to you when you were 8? And he went, what? And that was when his mother remarried after his father had died. And yeah. And he goes, how did you know? And I said, because in that moment, you're acting out like an 8-year-old. And so we nailed it just like that. But you can see that when you just pay attention. It's kind of fun.
Mhm.
And if you feel comfortable, sorry, if you feel comfortable with the person, like if it's a friend, you could start to ask, did anything happen to you when you were 12? Or, tell me a little bit about your teenage years, right? And maybe get them to talk about some things, and not to pry, but to confirm to yourself that you're able to recognize that particular age, right?
Yeah, and to bring awareness to the pattern. I recently was at a conference and took a regression class where we talked about a lot of these types of concepts and looked at a timeline for people of, between birth to now, and these significant things that happen at different ages to themselves, their parents, like you said, whether it was a loss or a divorce or something else that was a major life transition or change, and how we play those out. And a lot of people aren't aware, those are subconscious patterns and habits that we have. And so, like you said, paying attention, starting to be curious about that, starting to bring our awareness up about that. And that's something that's really valuable in a session with a client to be able to do, is say, okay, like, let's figure that out and heal that 8-year-old, for
Mhm.
example, because that 8-year-old, whether it was something that, happened that shouldn't have, or should have happened that didn't, trauma can go either way. And children can very much internalize things. And again, that creates that belief about, this is the way the world works, or this is who I am, or this is my worth or value or lack thereof. And so when we can do that and give them what they needed at the time, maybe that they didn't have or didn't get, it really is powerful healing work.
It is. And that really describes a lot of the inner child work that we do. Is how I help a client is, if we sense that, we may pick up on it in their conversation, that there was a time in the past that something happened, in their behavior, their languaging, uh, their expression of some sort, or they may just out and out tell you, I had this trauma when I was 9 years old, or, when I first went to school when I was 5 or something. And so depending on the age, what I do with my client is, of course, my client is already in trance. So, we have the hypnosis first. And the beauty of that is that they're connected to their higher self, or their subconscious mind. And so they're getting information, details, memories, maybe flashes, making connections that consciously they may have buried, or they no longer remember the incident at all. I've had clients do that too, where then they go into that age, or they connect with that age, and they start telling about an event and say, I didn't even remember this event, or I
Right.
didn't think it had any significance.
Yeah.
But their subconscious mind is letting them know where they need to go. So
Mhm.
anyway, we go in there, and I ask the client to imagine, that they are there with the smaller child, or sometimes the inner child is 34 years old. I mean, it can
Yeah.
be an
We
adult,
could be regressed to any age. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Traumatized, in your 40s, and that's still an inner child, a place to get stuck. But let's say it's, maybe even an infant. Sometimes things are happening in the womb, or, you know, in infant stage, and consciously they're not remembering. But again, because we're connected to the subconscious, it's showing the client that there was maybe negative talk from the mother, during that time. She was worried, or the parents were fighting, or they didn't want the child, or they were concerned, whatever. And so we have to go in and help them repattern that or reorganize their perspective of that. Or it could, so if it's a baby, then, I ask them, imagine that you're holding that infant, your 6-month-old self or whatever. If it's a smaller child, they may be sitting on your lap. Or as they get older, maybe they're sitting with you. Or maybe in the teen years, maybe you're sitting at a table having tea together and chatting, or a soda of some sort, and having a chat. As it gets older, those scenes change, but they're there together. And so then, one of the opening questions is, how does the child feel? Or ask the child, what is it they need? What is it they need, or how do they feel? And so then the child, and I ask my client, don't assume, just be open to receiving the information from the child. And so, and one of the important steps here is that they visualize the child very clearly. It's not just a flippant thing, but I want them to really feel the child sitting on their lap, describe them, talk about that, or really connect with it. And then ask them, what is it you need? And we don't have, the beauty of this is they don't have to go back into the trauma. They don't have to even share all the things that happened, right? We don't need all that information. But the child may say, I need to feel safe. I need to be secure. And so then, you'd ask, well, what can we do to give you that? What is it you want? Well, can you just hug me? Can you protect me? Something like that. So it becomes a dialogue. You're kind of feeding the dialogue, but the dialogue is between the client and the child. And what I recommend, because we're going to go through different ages from there, we're going to start there, but maybe there's some echoes of that later on. But we stay at each age until that child or that age, that person at that age, is completely liberated from those negative feelings. So we stay there, whatever you need. If you need a hug, if you need some words of wisdom, if you need me to walk into the schoolhouse with you, whatever that is, somebody to play with. I feel so lonely. Nobody's here, well, I'll be here always. And there's this dialogue and this reassurance throughout that. We're gaining information about what happened and why it was traumatic, or why it's keeping them stuck now, or creating behaviors like abandonment issues or something like that. We can understand what that is. So we want to alleviate it and make sure that it's completely gone. So that conversation goes on for a little while until we know that the child is all balanced out again and feeling secure, safe, happy, whatever. Sometimes, not always, but frequently, we'll also add in some reframing. So let's say the child is 8 years old and now the mother has to go to work and they're left alone all the time, right? So they're alone, and maybe there's somebody in the household that is aggressive, maybe the stepfather, or there's something going on. Well, as we go through and we work to resolve this issue that they're experiencing, I also ask them, and we have to be very careful in doing this, and in the training we talk about this in more detail, but I also ask them, no matter how hard it was for you to go through this time, what is it you learned? How did that build something in your character? How did that make you stronger in any way? And sometimes it takes a stretch for them to really come up with an answer, but over time they'll say, well, I learned to be more um, uh, self-contained. I learned that I can't trust everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that I learned some survival techniques. I learned how to make my own food. I learned how to prepare better because I knew that I'd be left alone. So I knew that, that I needed to make sure there was food in the fridge, or that, whatever was happening, whatever they needed in advance. I learned how to do some planning in advance. So they'll tell you about all these things that they learned, and it can be very, very empowering, very powerful. Um, and then, oftentimes I'll ask the client, what would have happened? What in your life would have been different had you not learned all those things? And, a lot of times the client would be like, oh my gosh, that was so powerful that I learned, even learning not to trust everybody, right? So, oh, well, then when I'm a teenager, I'm not just running off with any boy, or, I'm learning to discern, the characters of people, because I know that not everybody is out there for my best interest. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've had clients who, and usually then we just, oh, no, let me finish that one. So once we determine what was the gain that they had, right, the reframing, then I have my client give that child or that younger version of themselves all sorts of appreciation and kudos. Thank you so much for going through this difficult time. You were so brave and strong, and look how clever you were, that instead of just collapsing under it, you stood up and realized, okay, I need to step up and take care of myself. I need to do these certain things. And all of a sudden the inner child is like, oh, okay, I'm pretty cool,
Yeah.
right?
Something a little taller. Yeah.
Yeah, look at me. And so, the older person is saying, wow, I couldn't have done it without you. You learned these lessons, and that has been valuable for me all this time. Sometimes it goes in the direction of, um, you know, sometimes when they can't get out of it, they're going to have to go through this, right? They're 8 years old. They're not going to be out of the house for maybe 10 more years. Okay, so what can we do? So maybe we're helping strategize with the inner child different ways that they can navigate through those years. And at least one client, you know, we we talked to the child about the fact that, they were in this incubator state where they had to learn certain things so that their adult life was so much more successful. So just, like supporting, I'll be here always, I'll check in on you, and finding ways for that child to really feel strong, but also feel like I'm not just going through this and it's just destroying my life and I'm getting crushed, but I'm going through this so that I can get stronger. Like you're going to the gym and lifting weights. And yeah, maybe it isn't all that fun and it hurts and you're sore afterwards, but it's going to produce a fantastic thing. And so then the child gets really excited and like, yeah, I can do that. Okay, this is going to be part of my mission. This is going to help me to be able to be more authentic and live my purpose in the future if I buckle down and, figure out how to navigate this more distasteful period of time, but at least it's for a purpose. So uh, it can just be so empowering. So that's the reframing within it. And then once that's done, and then we give all the kudos to the child, and the child is feeling all cool. It's ready to go. Usually they're ready to go off and play or go be a child and go do their thing. And we know that they're fine now. They don't need any more help. And then I ask, okay, when is the next time in your life, the next age, when we should check in and do a little work? And if we started at 8, maybe the next one is 13 and 19 and 35, and the first divorce, and the or the first heartbreak, the first divorce, whatever. And we go through and we do that to each age.
Yeah, so powerful, because there's always going to be more things that come up in people's lives.
Yeah.
And you said the conversation with that inner child saying, you know what, I am you, and we made it through. And this
Yeah.
is how it shaped our character, or, I'm through it now. I'm okay. You will be too. That is, again, so powerful, so affirming, like you said, so empowering. And
Yes.
so, yeah, that's definitely why it's one of my favorite techniques, because in the moment, whatever your lens was, your perspective was, especially as a child too, in that moment, things look a certain way, and that sticks with us. But then we have that benefit of reflecting back,
Mm-hmm.
and I always describe it. I use the metaphor of the snow globe of our lives, that, we're in our own snow globe, and sometimes there's a blizzard and it's really hard to see out, and you can really only see what's going on inside. And I feel like this technique allows them to step on the outside and kind of look back in and reflect and see some of those things that they really never even thought of before. He said, a lot
Yeah.
of memories, yeah, clients will say, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that in 40 years. I never had any idea that that impacted me at all. And
Right.
sometimes it's something that's really simple. And as an adult, they can reframe that and move forward. And sometimes it's really complex and it keeps coming up, like you said, in their life from that point forward. And so we need to move through, multiple ages of that. But yeah, it's just such an impactful way to work through and have that real and lasting change, not just put a band-aid over it and move on. It's something that goes a lot deeper.
Yes, absolutely. Um, yeah, this is very deep work. People just move forward so quickly. They get past the blocks, they change behaviors, they get different perspectives. Um, it's so heartwarming to be able to do this work, to see people come in with their issues, feeling stuck, feeling lost, not knowing what direction to go, and having these you know responses and reactions to life that they don't even like, and are not useful, right? And to come out after a few sessions, one session or more, and have so much of that straightened out, and so that they can be living in a way that is much more aligned with their authenticity.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is only one of the types of techniques out of dozens that are in your integrative hypnotherapy and past life
Yes.
regression course. And so let's talk about that, because I know you have another round of live calls. Now you have your online course. People can hop into that anytime and get
Right.
started. But a few times a year, you'll do live trainings. And so you do a live series. You have another one coming up at the beginning of June. So would you like to share a little bit about the course and what that looks
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, like we said in the beginning, you'll be able to work with people no matter what it is, whether it's addictions, physical pain, emotional pain, psychological issues, being stuck, on and on. The only thing, the line we draw is if the person is like schizophrenic. I mean, clinically, they need to have a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But we can work with all the other things with the tools that you'll be given. Uh, so the training is online on teachable.com, and it combines the hypnotherapy with NLP and past life regression. And the training is up there all the time. So as soon as you register, you have access to the training. And I recommend people do it before, like a week or two at least before the live calls, just so that you're ready, because the live calls, we're already doing demonstrations and answering questions and things. So that's up there. And the other nice thing about it is you can always go back to that and refer back. So as you go through and you graduate, if in a year from now you think, I need to review some of these techniques, it's going to be up there and available to you. And it does include dozens of techniques. So there's a lot to learn. So meanwhile, like Jodie said, 3 times a year, I offer a series of 10 phone calls, Zoom calls. So they're all on Zoom. And everybody who's registered for the class convenes. And this round is going to start June 3rd. And they're going to be Tuesdays from 8 to 10 Pacific. And so, so for 10 weeks, we're going to go, and there are assignments. There's modules that I recommend you read before each of the weeks. You don't have to. I mean, if you haven't read it, you're not going to be as clear as to what we're talking about. If we're talking about a technique and I'm demonstrating it, it's much better if you've already read through it and you kind of get the idea, you understand the grammar, the words, the linguistics of it, and then now you're seeing it demonstrated. But we go through that for 10 weeks. Then, so June, you're going to finish in August. If you go through and you read and you do all the online stuff, all the online lessons, and you attend all 10 calls, and you are required to do 30 hours of practice sessions, which are really easy to accomplish, actually. So in 10 weeks, if you did three hours a week, and you have, you can practice on friends and family. If you already have a practice, you can incorporate these techniques, like massage therapists, coaches, they're, or if you're a hypnotherapist already and you're getting this continuing education, then you can apply this to the clients you're already seeing, and you still get credit as long as you're practicing these techniques. And so if you were to complete all of that in 10 weeks, then you get your certificates. You get one as a master hypnotherapist, and you get another one as a master past life therapy specialist. And it's it's considered 200 hours, and you're only required to have 100 hours to join organizations like the MGH, where Jodie is a president of the local chapter. And so in order to join the national organization as a professional, you'd need 100 hours. You're going to have 200 hours, so you're going to have a much better education. Then in fall, let's say you finish in August, and first of all, if there's a class that you miss, I always send out the replay within about 24 hours, either that evening. Since it's morning, I'll probably get them out that day. Sometimes we have evening classes, and then they may go out the next day. And all you have to do is watch the replay and give me bullet points as to what we covered. So maybe 5 bullet points would cover, we did a demo on this, we talked about this, that sort of thing, just so I know you watched the whole thing, and then you'll get credit for being on that call. So also, then let's say in fall, you want to come back, you're thinking, oh, now I've been out there, I've been practicing, and now I have even more questions, and I want to review these techniques and whatever. You get to come back to the calls for free. So I'm sorry, the door is opening. My husband's coming in off the deck, and it squeaks.
It's squeaky. That's happened. It's real life. It's okay.
Yeah, he's using a walker now, so he's kind of struggling, but anyway. So you get to repeat the calls. And as Jodie knows, you get to repeat the calls anytime that I offer them. And so, Jodie, you're like, this will be number 4 or 5, 6. I don't know.
Probably 6 by this point.
Probably 6.
But, I have to say, I learn something new every time. And because, I love learning, I love teaching, all those things. And so for me, that continuing education is so important. And just being able to be in your space and learn and practice. And, there's always, because you do demos in all the classes, there's always new things that come up. And when you wrote Mastering Hypnotherapy, there were some new techniques, for example, that you put in there that weren't in my original training. And so, it's an evolution. It really is, because that's what we're doing. We're practicing what we're teaching, right? And so it's important because over the years, for example, you started really teaching about your hypnotic envelope, for example, and really got that honed in. And so that was a new iteration of the course. And so I do feel like it's always evolving, just like we are as people.
It's funny because I accessed one of the audio tapes that I had made years ago, and I was listening to it. I thought, okay, I just wanted to listen to it. And I did something in the induction that I haven't used for years. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to incorporate that again. And I'm going to teach it in this June class. So you're going to learn yet another new thing.
That's fantastic. I'm excited. And and I'll be there. And I know I've offered and you took me up on it, that I'm happy to help. And, it's something that, as you're learning, what's the best way that they always say to learn is also to teach too. And so you're always asking for people to practice with each other, to come on and be a demo with you. That hands-on learning is so important. It's not just the online, which the online is fantastic, by the way, but the fact that you offer, these live experiences helps us to really solidify those concepts and build our confidence. Because, when people are building that confidence, and that's one of the reasons why I love going to new classes too, is, I love helping to support people in doing that. I think that is really special. And, if I can talk about, somebody I worked with and this is how I help them, or this is how I use a technique, I'm always happy to do that. So you're not going to get it anytime soon.
Well, we're always learning from each other too. And there's new people in each of the classes. But then there's also people who are repeating. So there's these different levels of questions, people with, that are brand new, doe eyes in the headlights, right? And so they have a level of questions trying to figure things out. And then the people that have come back once or something, and then they're starting to work with clients and have a certain level of questions. And then people who are very, very seasoned like you have things to contribute, or client cases to add in, and examples. And so, like you say, every set of calls are different, but it's wonderful because then the senior students are helping the junior students and helping them with confidence and understanding that journey of learning, because you come in and you're learning something brand new. And that's kind of scary for adults, really, because we're at a stage where we already want to know everything. We don't want to come in and like, I don't know what that is, or I need help with this. But it's such a supportive group of people. And then we also offer, my students get to come into a private Facebook page, and then we can ask questions, we can support each other. You can ask for other practice partners, and you can ask anything from marketing, setting up your business, to different techniques. And, people will ask, well, how should I do this? Or, I'm kind of stuck. Where would I go from here? And we're not competitive, we're collaborative, which not all professions and not all groups of hypnotherapists are like that, but we certainly promote the collaboration.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important. And like I said, a lot of courses I do know also don't go into the business part. And so I think that's important because we do talk about business in that course, talk about marketing, right? So that's something that is always an evolution as well of how to find clients and how to figure out what your niche is going to be and all of those things. And so I love that you put that into your course
Mm-hmm.
because that's something that we need to know. That's one of the things I didn't learn in school. It was, really, well, here's how to help people, but not how to help yourself and actually having a business and doing it. So, yeah,
How
so
are
I
you
think that's
doing it?
really nice that that's another part that makes it so comprehensive, that we're,
Yeah.
like you said, this can be deepening your knowledge like it was for me and your skills, or it can be your first experience in this field and you can come out of it competent
Yes.
and yeah, and being able to, like you said, to help people with just about anything that comes your way. And I, just love that about your program and what you've built over the years. So thank
Well,
you.
thank
I'm grateful for
you.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do have a link. So I will put my link up right now. And then there's a code right now, a savings code for
Mhm.
10% off, right?
Yes,
By
it's on
15.
the page. The savings right now until midnight on May 15th in the Pacific time, midnight here in Seattle. This will go away, but they can save $350 using the code Hypno10, which is all capitalized HYPNO 10. Hypno
Perfect.
10, all one
Okay.
word. And that'll give them $350 off, which is fantastic. And it's the early bird, yes, the early bird savings, and that goes away at midnight on May 15th. Yeah, because we're starting in June 3rd, and
Mm-hmm.
because we're online, which is fantastic, I think, because people used to fly in for my trainings. And now I've trained people in South Africa, Belgium, Germany, England, all across Canada, across the US, in Mexico, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, can't think of where else. And now for this coming class, we have somebody from the UK and somebody from Australia. So, they're
Well,
coming
that
from.
timing's perfect. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That class, that timing can translate most of the world.
Well, for the UK, so when we did the evening class, it was better for Australia. And
Yeah.
then this one, because I had somebody come in from the UK, I thought, okay, I'm going to do it in the morning. So it's perfect for him. But now that I have somebody from Australia, and he said, I'm just going to stay up. It's going to be like midnight for him. And he
Yeah.
said, that's okay. I'll just stay up and I'll
Good for
do it.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know,
You know,
he's not working otherwise, so he said, I'll just sleep in and adjust my sleeping patterns. But it's fun because you meet people from all over the world. You get
Mhm.
opportunities, you find out about conferences everywhere or how they're doing things differently elsewhere. Or if you plan to travel, now you've got connections in different places. So you never know.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll make sure that this link goes under all the places where you might be able to find this video. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today, Mary Lee. This was fantastic. I know that everyone who watches this is going to learn so much and maybe they'll join us. I would love to invite anyone watching if you want to learn more and deepen your skills, whether, like Mary Lee said, you're a coach, you're a massage therapist, you are, hypnotherapist already, or, just somebody who's wanting to learn more about healing work. It's
Yeah.
just such a great opportunity to, either start a new business or add to your business and have a greater depth of knowledge and skills and increase your revenue. So definitely a great place to be starting on June 3rd. So, like
Great.
I said, you. Is there anything you want to close out saying?
Well, no, except for there's no education, like prior education required. You don't have to have a college degree or psychology degree or anything. I give you everything you need to operate your business. So, or to
Point.
open and launch your business. So anyway, all I can say is thank you for making this happen today. And I look forward to seeing you in the class June 3rd. And hopefully several other people out here who are watching will join us as well. It's always fun.
It's always fun. Absolutely. We have a great time. We learn a lot. So thank you again. And thanks everybody for watching. Take care and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.